Hello everyone, it's Mark. Have you eaten? Yeah, they're adding a gun to Soulframe. So this is Preludes 14, which is a content-focused update as opposed to Preludes 13's more systems-focused one. The biggest thing being added is a new pack called Duelo, as well as its accompanying fable. The Duelo pack is themed around fencing and dueling, emphasizing on damage and avoiding it. The first ability, the character wields a gun. That's pretty much it. It does what you think it does. The shot pierces through enemies and can hit multiple targets. The second ability is a team-wide buff that increases the highest stat for each player. So if your teammate activates this spell and your highest stat is Courage, then you will get a boost in Courage, an additional spirit. The ability will also induce an AoE slow on enemies. The final spell is a buff that has an echoey spirit duplicate your attacks. Essentially, you gain double strike, but the second instance of damage is reduced. You can kind of think of it like melee duplicate in Warframe, or if you play Street Fighter, Yun's Ginei-jin. The first passive of this pack grants you 3 charges worth of after images on a perfect dodge. What this means is that after you perfect dodge, you get 3 charges, and every time you dodge after that, you leave behind an after image which will taunt enemies and distract them. The second passive gives you a bleed proc on melee hits, meaning each melee hit has a chance to inflict bleed on the enemy. This pack also comes with a new main story quest or fable called The Wreck of Mestral Carmo. It unsurprisingly focuses on Mestral Carmo, who is a boss that you must fight during the quest. She is also, however, an ancestor who will be added to the Nightfold after the fable. The quest is naval/ship themed with references to pirates and swashbucklers. The patch will also introduce 5 new weapons. The first is Navaja, a rapier which is themed around the Duelo pact. For those of you who might imagine this being a new weapon type, it is not. It still falls under the longsword category, but does introduce a whole new set of animations as well as a vicious heavy attack lunge that travels quite a distance. Following this is Like Wake, a cool looking sword and shield, and Silly Staff. Wow, they actually call it Silly Staff. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's spelled Silly Staff. Anyways, it's an old themed caster staff which has cool visual effects. The other 2 are Esperdarte and Cenotaph, which are unknown weapon types at this time. There is also a new bird cosmetic being added as well with a cool mask and backpack. It is said to be free, but the way to obtain it is unknown for now. There's also a new siege as well called Mirifir, which is the fort up north finally being accessible. The siege will introduce a new boss called Conductor Benisum, who has a shield gimmick that players must remove before damaging him. In addition, there is a new tile set called the Fallen Oud Castles, which are corrupted infested dungeons bringing new enemies. The new enemies are worms, which can burrow underground to attack. They are led by a new boss called the Rovgot Worm. It's essentially a bigger version of the worm. Votives or world quests are also being looked at a bit in that 5 new types are being added with adherence to the philosophy of always having something to do. These new quests are smaller in scope but are promised to be engaging continuously, whatever that means. Finally, there are some significant system changes being added as well. The first is to the runes. The devs have since felt unhappy with the current implementation of the system and have had the changes ready for Preludes 14. Runes can now be banked by soul-stealing enemies. Each soul seal will grant 1 charge of the rune, and the rune's level will determine the amount of charges that can be held. Unleashing a heavy attack will now expend charges to use any banked rune power for that instance. I'm not entirely sure about this change, and I need to play it more to render judgment. However, I am particularly worried about the feeling of using runes. For instance, one of the most basic but coolest things is having a flaming sword from something like Everflame. This system will make it so that the heavy attack will set your weapon on fire and deal great damage for that one attack, but lose out on the visual coolness of having a fiery sword. The charge system in and of itself may not be a bad thing, but for something simple like adding an elemental damage type to your weapon, I wish it would have fewer max charges like 1 or 2, and a button press that would activate the rune, but with reduced duration so you have your few seconds of fun swinging a burning sword. Again, I would need to play it first before I would say if I dislike it or not, but I guess we'll see. The other big change is that joineries are being simplified. Joineries now only give 1 to 3 attunement for the reforged weapon, and that is it. Blessed Joineries plus 25 extra damage will now be active only when the weapon reaches rank 30. And last, Orlek is getting a buff. He will now have a rank up system whereby he will task you to complete missions for his book research. These tasks will explain and force players to use and interact with the different mechanics in the game. For instance, he might guide you to world trees, show you how totems and runes work, and lead you to quest givers and other ancestors. This is essentially a mechanics tutorial for newer players. Coming with this is a big change to the codec and journals. This will make sparrow tracking and markers on the HUD more clear and lead to more accurate results. The journal will now display the different types of enemies and what they drop, such as weapon and armor fragments, as well as other materials. That is all Preludes 14 will be adding. Again, it is more content focused, so expect to be farming a bit more in the coming patch. All of this will be available around mid next month, so mid-April. So mark your calendars with a broadish stroke and make sure you guys eat good food, stay fed, all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.